Okay, so picture this. A justice system where the main goal isn't to find out who's guilty, but to bring an entire community back into harmony. That's the world we're diving into today, the world of Melanesian justice. And let me tell you, it's a system that's going to challenge pretty much everything you think you know about law and order. So let's get into it.
So let's start with a really big question. What is the ultimate goal of justice? Is it just about figuring out who was right and who was wrong? I mean, for a lot of us, that's kind of the default setting, right? But what if there's a completely different way to look at it? This one question, well, it's the key to unlocking everything we're about to talk about.
And boom, right here. This is the fundamental split. On one hand, you've got the Western approach, which is laser focused on the individual. Who did it? Are they guilty? But then you look at the Melanesian approach, and the goal is just so much bigger. It's about restoring the balance for the entire community. That's a massive, massive shift in perspective. All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with the Melanesian worldview itself, then we'll dig into the cultural ideas that keep things in balance. We'll look at the epic clash when these traditional ways meet modern law, put the two styles of mediation head to head, and even give you a practical toolkit before we look at what the future holds. So first up, let's get our bearings. Where even is Melanesia? It's a region in Oceania, but the most important thing to get your head around is the unbelievable diversity here. We're not talking about one single culture. This is one of the most culturally varied places on the entire planet, with over 1,200, 1,200 distinct languages. And if you're a lawyer, a mediator, or really anyone working in this part of the world, this isn't just interesting trivia. Getting this worldview is, well, it's non-negotiable. It is the absolute foundation for doing anything effectively and, just as importantly, respectfully. So how does all that diversity lead to a coherent system of justice? Well, it all comes down to a few core cultural principles that really shape everything. These are the foundations of harmony, and we're going to break them down right now. First, in a lot of Melanesia, you don't inherit leadership like a king, and you don't get elected like a president. You become a leader through something called the big man system. Your influence comes from your skills, how persuasive you are when you speak, and crucially, your ability to be generous and share wealth. It's not a fixed position. It's a constant, dynamic competition for respect. Just as vital is the idea of one talk. It literally means one talk, as in speaking the same language. Think of it as the social glue that holds everything together. It's this incredibly powerful network of obligations you have to people from your clan or your village. It's your identity, your insurance policy, and your social safety net all rolled into one. And the concept that ties it all together is custom. Now, this is way more than just custom or tradition. It's the entire framework for life, from art to rituals to how you interact with people every day. And here's a key part. Custom doesn't see a wall between the physical world and the spiritual one. Ancestors are still considered active members of the community, influencing things from beyond. So, when you weave those three concepts together, the big man, wantok, and custom, you end up with a justice system where punishment really isn't the point. The ultimate goal, every single time, is to fix what's been broken, to restore the balance for the good of everyone. Which, of course, brings us to a huge point of friction. What happens when these ancient, community-focused laws smash up against the formal, Western-style legal systems that were left behind by colonial powers? Well, this is where things get really, really interesting. You see, as these nations gained their independence back in the 70s and 80s, they mostly inherited legal frameworks from countries like Britain or Australia. But these new laws didn't just replace the old ways. They were basically just dropped on top of thousands of years of customary practice, creating these two parallel and often competing systems. And this quote from the source report just nails it. We tend to look at some issues and just call them corruption. But it's so much more complex than that. It's a genuine clash between two different and, in their own way, legitimate moral codes. Your deep cultural obligation to help your wantok runs directly counter to the Western ideal of an impartial government official. But it's not always a story about conflict. In fact, there are some amazing examples where blending the two systems works brilliantly. Marine conservation projects, for instance, are way more successful when they're based on customary sea rights. When you blend custom and state law, you can get some incredibly powerful results. All right, now for what I think is the centerpiece of this whole explainer. We're going to put Melanesian customary dispute resolution and Western-style mediation side by side.
This is where the differences really pop.
And I really want to stress this. We're not just talking about different steps in a process, like filling out different forms. The differences are philosophical. They start from the very foundation, from that first question we asked. What are we even trying to achieve here?
And here it is, the foundational value. Western mediation is built on the idea of individual autonomy, your right to make your own decisions. But in Melanesian custom, the foundation is collective harmony, the web of relationships and obligations. That one single difference sends ripples through every other part of the process. This table just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the mediator. In the West, they have to be impartial, neutral. In Melanesia, not at all. They're an authority figure, an elder, or a chief. The process itself. In the West, it's confidential. In Melanesia, it's often public, because the whole point is to teach and reinforce community values. And the outcome? We aim for a signed legal agreement. They aim for restored relationships, often sealed with a ceremony or a shared meal. It's just a different world.
Okay, so with all that in mind, if you're a practitioner from the West, how on earth do you work in this environment? Let's switch gears from theory to a hands-on, practical toolkit for doing this right. Here are 4 absolutely crucial strategies. First, get the local influencers involved. You need the chiefs and elders there to give the whole thing legitimacy. Second, let people tell their stories. Forget direct, rapid-fire questions. It's about narrative. Third, make space for restorative acts. A formal apology, a symbolic gift. These can be way more powerful than a signature. And finally, and this is a big one, remember you are almost never dealing with just 2 individuals, you're dealing with their entire one talk, their whole clan.
All right, to wrap all this up, let's look to the future. Because the reality is, both of these systems, the old and the new, the customary and the formal, are under some serious pressure right now.
You've got massive global pressures. Things like illegal logging and mining that pit international companies against communities with customary land rates. And then you have the existential threat of climate change, which is literally forcing entire communities to relocate, straining these traditional systems to their absolute breaking point. And that leaves us with one final massive question. As all these global pressures get more and more intense, can these 2 profoundly different ways of seeing justice, one focused on the individual, the other on the collective, do more than just clash? Is there a path forward where they can actually learn from each other? I don't think there's a simple answer, but it's one of the most important questions we can be asking.